You're watching HQ Spotlight on CBS Sports Network. The AFC North, almost every single team in this division has a new head coach going into the 2026 season. All of them except the Bengals. So here's where each AFC North team stacks up. And Pete Prisco's latest power rankings, the free agency edition of power rankings, we got the Ravens just outside of the top 10, the Steelers coming in at 20, the Bengals right there at 21, and the Browns second to worst. I believe the only team they are ahead of in those power rankings is the Miami Dolphins. All right, let's welcome in Professor John Breach. Breach, you're going to give a grade for all the offseason moves for these teams, and Ryan Wilson. And Ryan, you're going to give us the biggest need for every remaining team here in the AFC North. Starting with the Steelers, new head coach, no more Mike Tomlin. It is Mike McCarthy's team. Who's going to be the quarterback? We don't really know for sure. John, what is the grade for Pittsburgh? And be nice, because you know Ryan is a Steelers fan, and I know you are a Bengals guy.
Look, I do my best to insult Ryan whatever I can, but I think he's actually going to like my grade. I gave the Steelers a B+, and to be honest, I might have made that grade an A if they had their quarterback situation figured out. We don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to come back. I do think he's going to come back, and it's because the Steelers went through free agency almost like they think he's going to come back. You look at what they did. They absolutely crushed it. They had to get that strong number 2 receiver that they've been trying to get for like 2 years. They went out and traded for Michael Pittman. They gave up almost nothing. That's a great deal. Then they go get Rico Dowdle. Of course, we know they lost Kenneth Gainwell to the Buccaneers. Rico Dowdle has gone over 1,000 yards in each of the past 2 seasons for 2 different teams. And he has a running style that's kind of bruising, so I think he can take some pressure off of Aaron Rodgers. And then you look at that Steelers defense. They really needed to beef up the secondary. They got Jamel Dean, one of the top corners, out in free agency. They picked up a couple safeties. I really like everything the Steelers did. I can't believe they're ranked 20th in Prisco's power ranks. Does he know they won the division last year, Jacqueline? I don't know what's going on.
I don't know if the Steelers know they won the division, John, but I do appreciate the B+. That's how I like to start my weekends, with great grades from John Breach for a team that's been pretty mediocre since Big Ben retired. Quarterback aside, and Breach hit the high points about what Aaron Rodgers may or may not do, and it does feel like he's coming back. Assuming he does come back, the biggest need for this team is probably offensive line, which is kind of crazy to say because they've invested a lot of draft capital along the offensive line. But the concern is Broderick Jones, their left tackle, who had spinal fusion surgery in December. It's unclear if he'll be ready in August or September, or maybe even after that. Isaac Seumalo left, the left guard, to go sign with the Cardinals. So that could be at pick 21 sort of need. Caden Proctor, the left tackle out of Alabama, is curious in terms of coming in right away and filling that need. They can find a guard later in the draft. Breach noted about all the moves they made in free agency. They had a ton of cap space, Jacqueline. They also have 12 draft picks, so they can move up and down and find what they need. But offensive line right now is the biggest need they need to fill.
Okay, so it's a B+ from Breach for the Steelers. Let's go to the Ravens, where Max Crosby was almost a part of that team. Then they pivot and get Trey Hendrickson from a divisional rival. And John, the offseason grade for Baltimore, though, it's a C+. Tell us why.
It is a C+. And, well, if you look at this graphic right here and you read that departures list, that is a big reason why it is a C+. You lose your Pro Bowl center and Tyler Linderbaum. John Harbaugh, your former coach, comes and steals half your roster by signing Isaiah Likely, your all-pro punter Jordan Stout, and it just doesn't feel like they did enough to replenish the talent that they lost. Now, I know that their big signing, the big whale they got in free agency, was Trey Hendrickson, but even that one comes with a couple red flags because Hendrickson is on the wrong side of 30. He missed 10 games due to injury last season. I mean, we're sitting here talking about Max Crosby failing his physical. Trey Hendrickson wasn't much healthier than Max Crosby last year. As a matter of fact, he might have been less healthy because he ended up on injured reserve while in Cincinnati. So that does come with a few question marks there. I did like the Jalen Hawkins signing. You put him back there in the secondary with Kyle Hamilton, Malachi Starks. That is pretty strong. So the Ravens had a couple good moves, but I just don't think it did enough to replace what they lost, which is how they ended up with the C+.
Yeah, and Tyler Linderbaum is a big loss, and they have to figure that out. Right now, Kalen Bullock is Corey Bullock, excuse me, Caleb Bullock's the defensive back for the Texans. Corey Bullock, that tells you how familiar I am with his name, is currently the center at atop the depth chart. So that's something they have to figure out. They're not going to do it in the first round where they now have that pick 14 that Breach talked about because of the Max Crosby trade did not work out. They do have pick 45, and someone like Trey Zune out of Texas A&M could be an option there. Pat Coogan is one of my favorite players in this class, the center out of Indiana. He should be available a little bit later on day 2, probably even into day 3. But they have to solidify that offensive line in the middle of it because everything runs through Lamar Jackson, and we see what that team looks like when he's not healthy, in addition to the other needs that John talked about. So I would start with center and then work from there.
All right, so we're going from Trey Hendrickson's new team to his former team in the Cincinnati Bengals. So, John, what do you make of your Bengals and the moves they did in the offseason?
Well, I know Ryan's fully expecting me to give the Bengals an A+. I am giving them a B-. Although, if we only graded the first day of free agency, I would have given the Bengals an A+ because they absolutely crushed it during that first wave, which is not something they usually do. They had to make their defense better. They went out and signed Brian Cook from the Chiefs. That was a great signing for them. They absolutely had to get help at safety. And then they got Boye Mafe from the Seahawks. You bring in a Super Bowl winning pass rusher, somebody who can help replace Trey Hendrickson, the loss of Trey Hendrickson, the loss of Joseph Asai. So those are two positions they absolutely had to do something at. And then it's like the Bengals fell asleep at the wheel and forgot you were allowed to sign other free agents. They did end up signing Jonathan Allen kind of in that second wave of free agency, and he'll help, but he's getting a little bit older, so it will be interesting to see what he has left in the tank. That could end up being one of those under the radar signings, but right now I'm not sure that defense is any better up front with him. So that is how they ended up getting a B-.
No Joe Flacco, the guy who single-handedly ruined the Steelers season by coming off the couch and just slinging it last year. That'll be interesting, the Joe Flacco part. But Joe Burrow healthy solves a lot of problems, as you guys know. You mentioned a Breach. Hendrickson's gone. Mafe is hopefully trying to replace some part of that production when Hendrickson's on the field. Edge rush, to me, still feels like the biggest need. Defensive line, as you noted, is also up there. They picked 10th. Caleb Downs, the safety, would be awesome. But as you talked about, they got Brian Cook, so there's a little wiggle room there. I would go Ruben Bain Jr. at 10 if he's there. Worst case scenario, Jacqueline, is if all the edge rushers and all the safeties named Caleb Downs are off the board, then what happens for the Bengals? Do they try to trade down or do they reach for a guy like TJ Parker? But at the end of the day, they have to get out of this first round.